Hello, my name's Stuart. I'm doing this live stream talking about Mozart piano concertos on vinyl LP. I'm just trying to get the lighting correct here. It's not brilliant, so I hope you'll bear with me. I've got some records here which I'm going to show. I'm going to be talking about various issues concerned with Mozart piano concertos on vinyl records, such as traditional instruments or authentic instruments, and mono versus stereo, older recordings versus more recent recordings, etc. So I wish I could do something about this lighting, but this is the lighting I've got. Let me just try and move my laptop around. Hopefully I can get a better picture. Well, okay, that will have to do. So then, yeah. Hello. Yeah, we've got somebody who's arrived. Yeah, just to recap, I'm going to be talking about Mozart piano concertos on vinyl records. Now, I'm a big Mozart fan. Not just a big Mozart fan. My three favorite composers, the Germanic composers, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. I'm also fond of Haydn, and Schubert really is not far behind Mozart and Beethoven. So I suppose it's fair to say that I'm a big fan of the German tradition in classical music. That's not to say that I don't like other traditions, Russian composers, Italian, etc., English 20th century music. So, but for me, the important period is a classical period and probably early Romantic. I'm talking about Mozart piano concertos. And let's just first of all say that Mozart has got credited to him 27 piano concertos, right? 27 piano concertos. However, if you know your Mozart well enough, you'll know that the first four concertos are actually material, or rather concertos based on other composers' material, such as Johann Christian Bach. So as a young composer, when Mozart was really just a boy, he was taking material from Johann Christian Bach and I think some others, and he was fashioning it into his own concertos. And I must say that I've got the first four concertos. I haven't listened to them much. I have listened to them. They're not really my favorite pieces to listen to, as curiosities to see how Mozart was developing as a composer when he was still a boy. You know, they're worth listening to, of course, but I don't think you're going to get much from them. Because what happened to Mozart when he composed his first real piano concerto is absolutely extraordinary. That he went from those sort of, let's call them almost plagiarized works. Well, of course, he borrowed material. He didn't. And in those days, and even now, composers borrow material without it being plagiarism. But K175, which is the first real Mozart piano concerto, is an absolutely spellbinding piece of work. It's an absolutely astonishing debut for Mozart, which is such a good concerto. It really gave an indication of what was to come, that even better than that was to come. It's still one of my favorite Mozart piano concertos. K175, Piano Concerto number 5, as it's popularly known. I would really recommend that you listen to that concerto. It's full of youthful, positive energy, fabulous ideas, great invention, beautiful second movement. And it's just, in fact, even Mozart said that, I think in one of his letters, that he normally takes it with him on his travels because it was so popular. And he composed that when he was just, how old was he? I think 16 years old or something like that. And yeah, it's just an incredible work, just unbelievable. It really demonstrates the mastery that he had at that age. And you'd almost say that somebody else composed it for him because it was so good and so impossible to believe that somebody that age could compose such an amazing piece of work. The only problem is there was nobody else alive at that time that was capable of composing on such a high level. There was only really Joseph Haydn that could have composed such a good concerto. And even his best piano concerto, in my opinion, I think it's a concerto in D for piano and orchestra, is not as good as K175. So no, it absolutely is Mozart. Yeah, okay. So we've got the first real piano concerto was Piano Concerto number 5, K175. Write that down. And if you don't know that work, I really suggest you go and listen to it. Listen to it on YouTube. It doesn't really matter too much which performance, because all of the performances out there on YouTube are, fairly good. You could listen to Mitsuko Yoshida. You could listen, if you want to hear authentic instruments, you could go to John Elliott Gardner and Malcolm Bilson. You could listen to Claudio Arau. They've all done it. All of the performances out there on YouTube are pretty good. Okay, so let me just show you that, some of the records that I've got, some of the Mozart piano concertos. How many are listening? Apparently I've got 4. I've got 4 listening. Obviously it's a live stream. I'm hoping that more people, once this stream is uploaded, that other people will hear this as well. Because look, I'm a big Mozart piano concerto fan. And if you're going to listen to anybody about Mozart piano concertos, you should listen to me. Because even though I'm not a musician, it was Mozart piano concertos that got me going on classical music, full stop. Well, virtually. Because before I heard Mozart piano concertos, I was listening to classical music. I was listening to a series called 100 Greatest Classics, which, I really enjoyed. It was really like a collection of overtures and movements, arias, and a sort of hodgepodge of pieces, which kind of got me going on classical music, but not really in a big way, not in a big way that made me want to really go out to the record shops and the CD shops in those days and voraciously start buying recordings. Because when you've discovered like a treasury of diamonds and you pick out one diamond, you look at the quality of it, you think, well, there must be more diamonds there too. So you go out and start looking. I suppose for somebody who's into rock music, it would be like hearing Dark Side of the Moon for the first time and then immediately going out wanting to listen to Wish You Were Here, The Wall, and other great music by Pink Floyd. And yeah, so the first Mozart piano concerto, which really opened up things for me, was K467, Piano Concerto number 21, the music that was used in the film Elvira Madigan. That was the first concerto, Mozart piano concerto I ever heard. And it just blew me away to such an extent that I thought, well, Piano Concerto number 21, that means that I didn't know that Mozart had 27 concertos to his name. I thought, well, there must be then at least 20 concertos that come before it. And that sort of excited me. I thought, well, if he can write one great concerto, he must have written other great ones as well. So I immediately started going from work to work and was just absolutely amazed that the quality was just so consistently stellar on every single work from one to the next. It was just an unbelievable experience. Anyway, I've got a set here. Mozart piano concertos 1 to 27 with the great Hungarian pianist Géza Anda. This is a really great box set. I bought this fairly recently from a local man who was selling his collection on, and it looks to me like he's hardly played this. It's got a nice booklet with it, with a picture of Salzburg. Lovely place that. Oh, wait a minute, is that Salzburg? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think that is Salzburg. It's not Vienna, definitely not. Yeah, that's Salzburg. I've been to Salzburg only once in the early 80s before I discovered Mozart. So I would like to go back again one day. I'll go to the Mozart Festival, which I believe is every year. So yeah, this is a really good set. He's one of the leading interpreters of Mozart, Géza Anda. I really rate Hungarian musicians. He was really fabulous. And there have been some great Hungarian pianists. Apart from Anda, there's been Zoltán Kocsis, there's been Andras Schiff, and who else? Okay, well, others that I can't think of off the top of my head. So on every single, it's got all the works listed here, which side they're on, and the keys and everything like that. So that's a really good set. This one's in virtually mint condition. So that's so that is a really good set, and a lot of people have got this. It's probably it's probably the biggest selling Mozart piano concerto set there is. There are others, of course. What is there? So the other Mozart piano concerto sets, if you want to own the whole lot, then, for example, Murray Pariah is a good choice. He's an excellent Mozart interpreter. He came, I think, in the late 70s. He's Peruvian, late 70s, early 80s. He really is very poetic with the way that he plays Mozart, and a flawless pianist, really. I think that some of his cycle was actually in analog. This is a digital recording. I haven't got the set. I used to have it. So this record has got quite an unusual pairing, actually. It's got Piano Concerto number 25, K503, and it's got K175 on it, which I've just been talking about. And this is an excellent rendition of K175 and the great concerto K503, which is an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. That's one concerto that when I first heard it, number 25, somehow I went through all the other great concertos and I missed out on K503. I heard number 21, number 20, number 22, the brilliant number 23, 24, of course, in C minor, 26, 27. I missed out number 25. I don't know how that happened, but it was about 6 months of me getting into Mozart before I heard number 25. And when you hear that big C major chord starting off K503, you know that you're in for something big, something major, almost like, when you hear Beethoven's Eroica kick off in a similar way, actually, you know that you're in for a monumental work. And I think that K503 is a monumental piano concerto. So, yeah, there's another one definitely to listen to. Yeah, so we've got Geza Anda, we've got Murray Pariah. I would recommend both of those. Let me just read out a couple of the chats. So Cooper says, hi, Stuart. Hi, Cooper. Ernst David Last Freeman, good morning from Australia. I scored 3 Karajan on DG vinyls for $1 a piece at a local charity shop here in Central West New South Wales. Well done. $1 a piece, that's an Australian dollar, which I think is half a pound here, probably. So, yeah, 50 pence a piece. Well done for that. I've not been doing too well on charity shops recently. I think I cleaned them out and I had some good luck with charity shops, but I've not really seen much in them recently. But it doesn't really matter because I bought so many records in the last few months that I need time to listen to them. And of course, I sell records as well from my website, which you can find the URL in the description. So, so another one that I would recommend is Mitsuko Yoshida. She, in the 80s, with Jeffrey Tate, they recorded all the Mozart concertos. I'm not sure whether there's a box set available. Actually, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure whether she recorded all of them. But she is a pianist par excellence. What I like about Yoshida's playing is that you can really hear every single note in the left hand and the right hand as well, the way that she hits the keys. Every note is like a little pearl, very well articulated. And I think with Mozart, unlike maybe with romantic music, it's like with a trill in romantic music, the number of notes is not well defined. You just sort of play them at a particular speed. I mean, it's like if you think about Brahms' Piano Concerto number 2, the incredible trill finish, the absolutely thrilling finish, the coda on Piano Concerto number 2, first movement, the coda is absolutely, it's epic and monumental. And the number of notes in that trill, he plays several trills. He moves up the scales, doesn't he? He moves up the keyboard, and then finishes off. I think there's 1, 2, 3. Each one lasts about 10 seconds. I don't believe that the number of notes is quantified, but in Mozart, the trills, every single note is laid down by Mozart. It's a particular number of notes that you've got to, and Yoshida plays them all to perfection. So very precise playing. Some people might say a little bit too clinical. I think I've heard that criticism, but it's another interpretation. So I would recommend Yoshida as well. I've got a few of them because, in fact, they're very hard to get hold of on LP. On eBay, they sell for about 25, 30 pounds a piece. Somebody who saw me on YouTube talking about Yoshida sent me these free of charge, believe it or not, something for which I'm very grateful. And I've listened to them and enjoyed them. So yeah, there's Yoshida. So we've looked at Yoshida, we've looked at Murray Pariah, and we've looked at, who else? Geza Anda, of course. Somebody else I would really recommend, this is a set which, if you want authentic instruments, I would definitely go for the Elliot Gardner set with Malcolm Bilson. It came out on Archive, which it's a Deutsche Grammophon offshoot subsidiary, which typically records in authentic instruments, but not only authentic instruments, records, what does it record? A lot of Baroque music, classical music, less romantic music. And they got Malcolm Bilson and Gardner together with the absolutely superb English Baroque soloists, probably the best collection of authentic instruments you're likely to find. I know there's Christopher Hogwood with the Academy of Ancient Music. Yeah, they're good. But I think that Gardner is better. And when you hear these for the first time on authentic instruments with Gardner, everything sounds so right about the way that the music comes across. The brightness of it seems more alive than conventional instruments. It seems fresher, and you can understand how excited people would have been to hear it when they heard it for the first time. The instruments were a lot, the bite on them, on the attack and everything like that. The brass, the rasping brass, there's a lot more sort of vitality, and it seems to resonate more for this kind of music than conventional instruments. I'm not ruling out conventional instruments, of course, but this is really startling when you hear it for the first time. In particular, in fact, if you listen to Piano Concerto number 20 with Gardner conducting, in particular, the brass really kind of brings the music to life in a way that it doesn't really happen quite in the same way with conventional instruments. So I would definitely recommend, there is actually a box set available on CD, not LP. I don't think so. I've got some of the LPs. I'm looking out for more of them. So that is really a special set. And these all come in a kind of gatefold. Although really it's just multiple languages, obviously, the history of the music, the circumstances, the context in which it was composed, etc., and the performance as well. I really like the jackets on these Archive. They're really, they really look quite elegant. If you'll excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink of water, not wine, by the way. Okay. So we've got 6 people watching. Well, glad to have you with me anyway. So I'll talk about some other pianists now. Now, one of the most celebrated Mozart interpreters is this lady, Clara Haskil. There are a lot of people who rate Haskil so highly that she is the top Mozart interpreter. Mostly she recorded in mono, and she's recorded the Mozart concertos number 19 and 27 with Frixai conducting, the Hungarian conductor. This is in mono, but frankly, I wouldn't let that put you off if you ever see this. The way the piano is recorded on this, I mean, I would say that the piano is recorded, it's really close mic'd with the piano, which is amazing when you listen to it, because you hear a lot of the piano. In that sense, it's unbalanced, but it's like the piano is sitting right in front of you. And when you sit in the concert hall and you've got, say, for a Mozart orchestra, say 35, 40-piece orchestra, and you've got the piano, that's not what you're going to hear when you listen to this. You'll hear the piano sounding as big as the orchestra, because the piano is sitting well forward and is big sound. Now it's mono, but still, that's a really interesting recording, particularly Piano Concerto number 19. So just to comment on these two concertos. So Piano Concerto number 27 in B-flat major. That is Mozart's last piano concerto. Now, that's a shame. It's a shame. It's a great concerto. It almost sounds like Mozart is saying goodbye to the genre. There's some sadness there. There is some sadness in this concerto, which sounds like one final hurrah in a way. But in reality, Mozart composed this concerto, I think, at least a year before he died. And he wasn't to know that he was going to die. He wasn't to know that this was going to be his last piano concerto. So, yeah, that's a great one. Number 19 as well. Number 19 is a concerto to lift the spirits. Number 19 in F major, K459. It's a concerto that just, you know, I mean, it's got such a cheerful opening theme. You can't help but smile when you hear it for the first time. And, you know, the middle movement is suitably kind of serene, with some seriousness and a bit of sadness, as you always get with Mozart. That's the amazing thing about Mozart, that, you know, clouds are never far away from the sun. You're listening to what you think is, you know, really nice, sort of happy, cheerful music. And then there's a spell where things go a little dark, or even when there's cheerful stuff going on, say with the violins, you can hear with the cellos and double basses, something a bit more ominous happening. That's something that Mozart is, it's like his trademark for me. So yeah, you get this really kind of cheerful music, but there's always some sort of, you know, gray or dark clouds lurking somewhere on the horizon. So this is actually a nice thick pressing. This is an English pressing. I believe that the trend is towards German pressings for Deutsche Grammophon for the 70s and 80s records, but I think for the early Deutsche Grammophones that the English pressings are actually quite good. This is actually quite a good, nice thick pressing made in England. That's quite a good one. It says here on the back, manufactured and distributed by Heliodor Record Company Limited, London. Now, Heliodor, as you may know, is a subsidiary label of Deutsche Grammophon. So I don't know if anybody knows anything about that. I'd be interested to hear some more details. So what else have I got here? Well, you know, you will see Mozart piano concertos played by so many different pianists. Just to give some mentions, Alfred Brendel is really good. So I'd recommend, you know, I mean, Alfred Brendel is not just really good, he's exceptional, particularly on Piano Concerto number 23, K488, which is one of my favorite piano concertos in A major. Again, it's a concerto with a really kind of happy, sunny first movement, a really amazing first movement. And the second movement is a complete contrast. I've heard it described as a kind of, you know, love story with a lot of pain in it, and I suppose that's quite a good description. Really ultra serious. It's so serious that I remember when I played it to somebody that I know, somebody that actually doesn't like Mozart. I was sitting, sometimes when you listen to music with somebody else, you can almost kind of hear it through their ears. Whereas if you're listening on your own, you know the piece so well. But if somebody else is there that maybe never heard it before, you almost sort of hear it like either for the first time, or it's like giving something away of yourself, which you've kept to yourself, something which is maybe secret and personal. That experience sort of opens up something for you and reveals something about your perception of it that you weren't aware of before. And when I played the middle movement of Concerto number 23, to me, it was so embarrassingly emotional. I mean, really, it was embarrassingly emotional, just way, I mean, the emotions are so strong and over the top in that second movement that, you know, I was almost embarrassed to play it in front of this person. And amazingly, this person said that Mozart's an unemotional composer. Well, I suppose that we all hear things differently, but to me, it was embarrassing. The middle movement is embarrassingly over emotional. Amazing to listen to it. And it does sound like an outpouring of pain. Certain parts of it do. And then, of course, the middle movement is just fast and bright and just an outpouring of, you know, positive energy and joy. It's a complete, it just sort of brings you back from the abyss of that sort of desperate middle movement. It's incredible concerto. Yeah, so I'm commenting on the music as well here, not just the performances. Yeah, so this record I picked up in a charity shop. Ian Hobson, winner of the 1981 Leeds International Piano Competition. To be honest, I've not heard of him, but he seems like a good pianist, and that's quite a good one. I always look out for pianists that I've never heard of playing Mozart, because it's not just the big names you need to look out for. Some of these pianists you'll never have heard of, but if they've got onto record, believe me, they will be good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on record. And I always discover something new from new performances, really. I don't often hear a bad performance of a Mozart piano concerto, oddly enough. Maybe I've not listened to enough performances. So what else? Well, I mean, of the records, that's all I've really got in terms of showing you records. But let me just see if I can think of any other performers that I recommend. Let me think back to the 70s. Who was playing Mozart then? I mean, there are some classic performances of Mozart. There's Annie Fisher, who I think her version of Piano Concerto number 21, already mentioned, K467, is said to be, at the time when it was released, it was thought to be by many people the best version of that concerto ever released. It was put out in mono on a Columbia record in Britain, British Columbia, that is, not American CBS. And it was only released in mono. And later on, HMV Concert Classics released it in stereo. So it is available in stereo if you buy the Concert Classics version. Yeah, so there's Annie Fisher. Now, there's also Maria Yudina. And I need to mention this and tell the story because it's such an incredible story. A lot of you guys will have heard of it. There's also a film based on this story. So I first heard this story from my son's violin teacher about 10 years ago, when he was having violin lessons with a Russian violinist, an old lady who sadly has since died, who recorded for Chandos Records, Lydia Morkovich. So she told this story, something I wasn't aware of, and the story went like this: that Stalin liked classical music. Stalin was listening on the radio to Maria Yudina playing a Beethoven piano concerto. He liked it so much that he requested a recording of it. Now, normally speaking, it seems that if there was a live performance on radio in Russia, they were usually recorded in some way. We're talking about the 30s, the late 30s. So I don't know what they would have recorded them onto. Not tape, obviously, because there was no tape in those days. I'm not sure how they recorded a work, but the point is, he wanted that particular performance because he was impressed with it so much. So the story is that they went to the radio studio and requested the recording of that performance for Stalin. Yeah. However, they hadn't recorded it. I don't know why, but they hadn't recorded it. They obviously didn't record everything, and they had no idea that Stalin would want this. And it's not like they could go back in time and make a recording. That performance has been lost forever. But the Soviet Union wasn't the kind of place where if Stalin asked you for something, you would say no. No, that's not what happened, unless you wanted to spend 25 years in a gulag. So nobody's going to go back to Stalin and say no. So in the middle of the night, apparently, they went to Maria Yudina and they explained that they needed her quickly to come back to the studio with the orchestra. They had to wake up all the orchestra members and they had to record it overnight in order to get a set of 78s on Stalin's desk in the morning. And they had like just several hours to do this. It's unbelievable. Can you imagine that if nobody would go back to Stalin and say, no, we couldn't do it because we didn't record it. Who knows what he might have done? So they weren't prepared to do that. Yeah, so they got all the musicians back. They made the recording. She did the performance, and they actually cut the records the same night, and they were able to present the recording to Stalin. I don't know whether they told him what happened or whether they just presented him with the recording. I suspect the latter, and that they did not say what had really happened. And apparently he listened to it and he was happy. Now, I heard that story, and of course I was impressed, and I wanted to hear this amazing Beethoven that was recorded like that under those circumstances. No chance for a second take, not like a modern recording where you can play a passage 50 times to get it right. No, she just sat down, played it through. The orchestra played it through. They had one chance. I don't know what they did. Maybe they cut it direct to a record or something. I've got absolutely no idea. So, pardon me, just need to have a drink. Excuse me, it's not easy. It's not easy talking for a long period of time, doing a monologue. I'll see how long I can go. Yeah, so they managed to provide that to Stalin and everything was fine. However, when I went and did some research on this, imagine my surprise, because of course, I would imagine that a dictator like Stalin, a man with an iron fist, wouldn't like a flowery composer like Mozart. No, I would imagine that he would be really keen on Beethoven, and that he would be sitting listening to Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 and imagining his own glory about being, I don't know, the man who dragged the Soviet Union through the revolution and glorified it and did great things in the world. So I imagine that Stalin would be a really kind of serious man who would naturally enjoy Beethoven, and who it never occurred to me that he would be a Mozart fan. Well, you wouldn't think so, would you? But it seems that this was not Beethoven that Yudina played, and it was not Beethoven that Stalin requested. She'd actually played Mozart Piano Concerto number 23 in A major, the very concerto I've just been talking about, with two sunny, bright outer movements and a middle movement expressing almost inexpressible pain and sorrow. That's my interpretation. So, yeah, so Yudina had actually recorded K488 and not one of the Beethoven concertos at all. And Stalin, to my surprise, enjoyed Mozart. Yeah, it's a big surprise. One of the biggest mass murderers in history, one of the worst, most brutal dictators. And I mean, he was so bad that his wife committed suicide when she realized she was married to such a monster. And his daughter suffered psychologically. And I mean, he was an absolutely terrible person. Okay. Yeah, I'll just say goodbye. Yeah, thanks for being with me, Stephen, Last Freeman. You were just saying I have to head out now, Stuart. I'm in my 70s. I really appreciate your knowledge and enthusiasm, which is similar to Mr. Green, my high school music teacher who turned me to the classics. Okay, see you again. Thanks for being with me. And, bookmark my channel if you want to hear more about classical music and obviously vinyl records. Okay, so just getting back to the story. So yeah, it was Mozart. And the great tragedy is, well, there's not too much of a tragedy, but this particular lady, for some reason, my son's violin teacher, Russian, she believed incorrectly that it was Beethoven, and it wasn't. And unfortunately, I never got to correct her on that and say, oh, by the way, it wasn't Beethoven, it was Mozart, and it was K488. And actually, it wasn't really important. I mean, on the whole, I think that Russians prefer Beethoven to Mozart, and she probably couldn't believe that Stalin would prefer Mozart to Beethoven either. I think that would be a surprise to most people. I believe that Lenin preferred Beethoven to Mozart. In fact, I've actually read somewhere that Lenin spent a lot of time listening to Beethoven. But apparently, oddly enough, Stalin seemed to be a bit of a Mozart fan. Not that gives me any pleasure, and it would be nice if it rubbed off on him and made him a better person. But it doesn't seem that it did. He just enjoyed the music. So naturally, when I realized it was Mozart and not, and I wanted to hear that recording. Of course, I wanted to hear it, and it is available. I managed to get a CD of it, and well, what can I say? Just go out and listen to it. I believe it's available on YouTube. You can listen to that recording. If you just type in Maria Yudina, Yudina, Mozart K488, you should be able to listen to it. That precise recording that Stalin treasured by all accounts. So much so that on the night he died, I've read this, I can't confirm it. I've read that particular record was sitting on his record player the night he died. They actually found that particular recording on his record player. So, yeah, I listened to that, and the technique of Yudina, the speed on that solo part is absolutely unbelievable. I've never heard anything like that. I've never heard any other rendition ever. It was just unbelievable technique. And I mean, it does sound a bit like they're racing through it, but by God, they are really going at it with the orchestra, and particularly Yudina. I mean, it sounds like she's playing for her life, that she knows what the stake is. She can't afford to, but she's not playing cautiously. It sounds to me like she's really going for it. So I would recommend to you to listen to that, definitely. Okay, yeah, so there's Yudina. Of course, she's old school. Who are the 70s pianists? There's Emil Galels, Ashkenazi. Okay, I mean, Ashkenazi strengths probably are in the Romantic tradition. Rachmaninoff, Tchaikovsky, and then maybe 20th century music like Prokofiev. But actually, he does a very good job on the Mozart piano concertos, I think. A lot of them are sort of digital recordings. I can't remember whether he recorded the whole lot, but I think he's quite good. Andras Schiff is another good one, good Hungarian. And, there are just so many. Goodman, he recorded some of the concertos. I think he's an English pianist. Clifford Curzon did a very good Decca concerto number 23 and number 24. That is a classic SXL on Decca. I would recommend that as well. So quite a lot of them. Let me just whiz through now. Let me just go through the concertos one by one and tell you what my favorites are. So I've already mentioned K175, concerto number 5. That's a phenomenal work, which is really effectively piano concerto number 21, number 1, sorry. Number 1. Okay, so let's go through them. So yeah, that's a good one. Concerto number 6 is a lovely little work. It's, it's very different to K175. It's got some lovely melodies in it. It's really, it doesn't get the love that it should do. Number 6, I can't remember the K number. Is it K238, I think. That's a lovely piece, number 6. Now, the concerto for 3 pianos, which is known as number 7, I think it's K242 possibly. Actually, I can help myself here because I've got Geza Anders set and I don't have to make mistakes on the K numbers. So yeah, I've got this booklet here, which gives all the information on the K numbers. So yeah, K1, K2, K3, K4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, K37, 39, K40, K41, K175 is number 5, K246, sorry, K238 is number 6. It doesn't seem to have, it hasn't got the concerto for 3 pianos here, which anyway is number 7. Obviously, no, it hasn't got it. I wonder if it's got K365, which is number 10. Probably hasn't got that either. He's just playing all the solo concertos, which is understandable. So yeah, now number 7, concerto for 3 pianos. That's not really one that I've got into too much. It's nice, but somehow, it's not as good as either number 6 or the one that comes after number 7, which is number 8, which is another fabulous early concerto full of positive spirits. It's the kind of thing that when you put on in the morning, it makes you feel like jumping out of bed. So that's piano concerto number 8. That's a good one. It's not what I would call one of the great piano concertos, but, it's still better than virtually anything anybody composed outside of Mozart in the 18th century classical tradition. Yeah, so number 8 is K246. And then we come to the really first great monumental piano concerto, which is K271 in E flat major, piano concerto number 9, which has got so much ingenuity in it. And particularly the third movement is the sort of thing when you hear it for the first time, you just know that this is one of the most unique, famous pieces of music ever written. And it really is. The whole concerto is absolutely amazing. The second movement actually sounds like a piece of romantic music. It sounds like, if somehow Rachmaninoff stepped back in time and he wrote the solo part for that and maybe some of the other bits for it, you would think that, it wouldn't be so far out of the ballpark. It's very romantic sounding. The Andantino is an amazing middle movement. And then, of course, the rondo, the third movement is just so breathtakingly original that, you never forget it once you've heard it. Yeah, so that's number 9, and that would be, say, one of my top 10 piano concertos. I'm not sure which one that would be, but that would be there, definitely. I don't think Mozart composed a better concerto than number 9. He equaled it many times, but probably never surpassed it. And yet, it's one of his earlier works. And this is the thing about Mozart. At the age of 23, 24, he was already a fully fledged master, whereas Beethoven wasn't at that age. He was a fledgling composer, still sort of finding his own voice, and he still had some way to go. But at that age, Mozart was already flying. Number 10, K365, Concerto for 2 pianos, great work, superb work. It's not here, but that's one definitely worth listening to. And the third movement features in the film Amadeus. It's one of the pieces of music that Salieri, when he lifts the folder containing Mozart's manuscripts, it's one of those that he looks at, and you hear the 2 pianos going against each other in the third movement. Okay, I've only got 5 of you listening. Well, I'm only going for about another 10 minutes, so I'll try and get through all these. Right, so concerto number 11 and number 12, I won't say too much about. K413 and K414, they're exceptionally good. I don't class them as being among the 10 great piano concertos. I mean, they're both superb concertos, but Mozart set such a high standard with his best concertos that when you hear these, you think, well, they're good, but then they're not his greatest piano concertos. Number 13 is a good one. It's got a very festive first movement with a lot of timpani, a lot of trumpets. And yeah, that's a really good one. Haskil recorded that. Haskil's the one to listen to, I think, with K415, number 13. Number 14 is very unusual. I didn't used to like it, but now I like it. It's got a really, unconventional first movement. Really, that one's definitely worth listening to. Still not one of my top 10. Number 15, it's got a really catchy third movement, which they play in Amadeus when Mozart is walking down the street. Coming back in Vienna, he's holding a bottle of wine and he's looking happy. How does it go? Yeah, it's really, really bouncy, happy piece of music. So number 15 is a good one, great one. Number 16 is what I call like a Cinderella piece among the whole lot of them. There are some people actually who I know who rate 16 as the best of them. They say that it's very unconventional, and he does a lot in it, which he, was really quite new and revolutionary at the time. I can't remember what it is. When I hear number 16, I don't quite hear that it's one of the great concertos, but maybe I need to go back and listen to it some more. So that's K451. What is a great concerto, though, is K453, concerto number 17 in G major, the great concerto, probably the best concerto he composed since K271, number 9. And it's an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. And in particular, the third movement is just a pure work of genius. It really is. There's so much unexpected in that short movement of 7 minutes. You just, the coda and the way that it finishes off is just absolutely unbelievable. There's just so much invention there that is just completely unexpected. And that's what you're looking for in a great piece of music. You want to be surprised. And that allegretto, 7 minutes 37 on this recording, it's just one surprise after another. It's just an incredible piece of music. Yeah, so that would be one that note down, K453, number 17, listen to the whole thing. And in particular, that third movement will just blow you away, as it did blow me away. Number 18, That's a good one, great one to listen to. I don't think it's one of the best 10. Number 19, that one probably just sneaks into the top 10. I've mentioned this one already. And then becomes probably the greatest piano concerto which I think has ever been composed, number 20 in D minor. I've seen some. I used to go onto the Talk Classical forum quite a bit, and every single time there was a poll on which is the greatest piano concerto, this one usually tops the charts at number 1 in D minor, K466. What is there to say about it? It was featured in Amadeus. It's just so breathtakingly original, dark, and sort of mysterious sounding. And the piano part is like it's kind of almost muted, like a sort of soft elegy, and then you've got this incredible, dark, almost demonic kind of music going on in the orchestra, and the contrast is really quite amazing. And then the piano really kind of opens up and starts doing the same kind of thing. And the left hand is just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's like it's a very, I don't know how to say, it's like a very supernatural kind of demonic kind of sound, which I think had never been heard up until that point, and probably until Beethoven came along was never really heard again. That is just so the first movement, the middle movement is absolutely unbelievable, because we've heard the way that Amadeus, the film, ends, with this absurd kind of scene in the madhouse where Salieri is. But there's like a slow start, almost comical start to that movement. And then in the middle, there's this amazing storm going on, this battle between the piano and the orchestra. And it just sort of takes you by surprise, and it's like layer upon layer of surprise. It's just a battle that you don't think is ever going to end. And then eventually it resolves itself in such an incredibly poetic way, and then comes back to the music that we heard at the beginning of the movement. And then there's the incredible rondo, which the whole concerto suddenly becomes a lot lighter, and there's this triumphant ending. I do think that that's the best piano concerto ever composed. I know that we've got great concertos that came after that, like Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, and everything like that, and they're phenomenal as well. But this one, for the time that it was composed, is just unbelievable. Now, I've mentioned Piano Concerto number 21, the concerto that got me into Mozart. What really impressed me when I first heard it was the introduction, the orchestral introduction, which seems to go from, melodic idea to melodic idea. And I mean, the length of it and the breadth of it and the scope of the introduction before the piano comes in. I mean, if you're impressed with Beethoven and the way that, say, the third concerto starts with that long orchestral introduction, if you think that's good, have a listen to Mozart Piano Concerto number 21 and the orchestral introduction, and tell me which one do you think is better. I know it's not a competition, but I mean, if you compare that with what else was being composed at the time, like C.P. Bach, whose entire concertos lasted like 10 minutes, and it was like 3 or 4 minutes per movement, and the whole orchestral introduction lasts 3 minutes alone, the length of an entire C.P. Bach concerto, and it just continues to surprise you. It's an incredible start to the journey. That really gripped me when I heard it for the first time. So yeah, that movement on here lasts 13 minutes 44. The middle movement, the ethereal, dreamlike middle movement, which has been used in the film Elvira Madigan. Really, if you're listening to that, it's like one of those eternal pieces of music which somehow already existed up there in the stars, and it was there for somebody to discover, and it was Mozart that discovered it. But no, it came from his head. It just came from sheer invention. I don't believe in God. I don't believe that God put music into Mozart. I just believe that he was a phenomenal, extraordinary musician. So yeah, that is one of my top 10, definitely. And then Concerto number 23, K488, I've already mentioned that. That is one of my top 10. That's probably one of my top 3. That is a concerto that gets a lot of people into Mozart when they hear that for the first time. You know, that is just an unbelievably good concerto. Number 22, I know I'm going in the wrong order here, it's the order in which they're appearing on this booklet. That's another great one that featured in Amadeus, the third movement there, the sort of marching rhythm. The first movement, the second movement, a phenomenal concerto. That's one of my top 10. Number 24 is probably one of my top 3 or 4. Some people think it's the greatest of Mozart's piano concertos, the C minor concerto. Yeah, that one is unbelievably good. Another dark work with an absolutely incredible final movement and an astonishing coda. The ending to that movement just comes out of the blue, completely unexpected. And if you've never heard it before, people say, oh, Mozart's so predictable. You can tell exactly what he's going to do next. Yeah, I've heard this so many times. And, I'd like to sit somebody down. People say this, but if you sat them down and said, all right, smart ass, what's coming next? They wouldn't be able to tell you. And Malcolm Bilson recently, I saw him, he was comparing he was comparing a Johann Christian Bach piano concerto with a Mozart piano concerto and, piano sonatas. And he was trying to do with he concluded that the way that Bach starts his concerto is comparable in quality with the way that Mozart starts his. I disagree with him about that, by the way. It's not. But I think I kind of know what he means. But the way Mozart answers his first and the way he develops what he starts off with is completely different. And he plays what Mozart would have done if he'd been Bach. And it's completely flat and uninteresting. And then he tries to do with Bach what Mozart would have done. And he fails entirely because he's not Mozart. Mozart makes it look easy. You think, oh, I can do that too. But no, you can't. You can't, because there was only one mind in history like that could do that kind of thing. So, and that's what I found. People say to me, oh, Stuart, you're too obsessed with Mozart. Go and listen to Clementi. He composed some great concertos too. And then, I go and listen to Clementi. And no, I'm sorry. No, there's a reason that Clementi's concertos are not played across the concert halls of Europe in the same way that Mozart's are. There's a reason that only students play Clementi and nobody else. Because there's not much good, that's why. Because his music doesn't make any sense. He can't develop it. His ideas, he's got some good ideas, but he's got absolutely no clue on how to develop his ideas. And he just rambles on and on and on. And of course, once Beethoven appeared on the scene and Clementi started learning from Beethoven, and he tried to sound big and bombastic, and he just ends up sounding absurd. And no, I'm sorry, Clementi is not a great composer, and he hasn't got any great piano concertos to his name. So, I hear this from people, and it annoys me, frankly. Don't talk to me about, third-rate composers like Clementi when you've got Mozart piano concertos. I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to Clementi and other composers, and I do myself. I listen to Hummel, I listen to even Dittersdorf and lesser masters, because it can be interesting to listen to other music that was around, and it's kind of pleasant. But let's face it, it's not on this level. It's nowhere near this level. So don't kid yourselves. If you want to go and listen to Clementi and pretend that it's as good as Mozart, go ahead. But, don't insult people's intelligence and don't make yourself look foolish by making these comments on the internet. Right. Okay. So where was I? Yeah. So number 24, and again, that's one of my top 10. Number 25, I've already mentioned. And yep, definitely one of my top 10. Actually, I'm going to give you my top 10 in a moment. I'm going to try and do it on the spot. I'm going to put myself on the spot here with my top 10. Let me just have a look at your comments. Somebody commented, I have Mozart 21 and 22. Annie Fisher, I'll give it a listen. Yep, do that. Dr. Rapper Band, yep, definitely number 21 and 22. Two great concertos. So yeah, concerto number 26, the Coronation Concerto. Yeah, so when Emperor Joseph died, Leopold, I think his son, was crowned Emperor of Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or Austria anyway. And Mozart wanted to impress him, and he composed a piano concerto. He was hoping for a court appointment, and it's so frustrating when you read the history of Mozart's life, and nobody was remotely in his league in those days, and yet he could barely scrape together a minor court appointment, and he got paid a pittance for writing some German dances. He was like a third or fourth tier court composer, and he was paid hardly anything. And mediocre talents like Salieri were raking in money, and Mozart was having to write begging letters to his friends. It's absolutely frustrating to read about these things. Think about how much money Mozart would make out of all the recordings. I mean, out of his genius in modern times. Think if he could somehow monetize that from beyond the grave. Anyway, yeah, Concerto number 26 in D major, the so-called Coronation Concerto. Musical critics have often said that it's way below his best standard of work, that it almost sounds like he's imitating himself, that he rushed it. And yet it remains one of his most popular works. I underrated this concerto for years, probably influenced too much by the likes of Alfred Einstein and Eric Blom and others that I read a lot of Mozart critics, probably too much influenced by them, because when I listened to Concerto number 26, I could see what they meant, that there seems to be some ideas in there where he seems to be kind of imitating himself. But more recently, I've come to really like this concerto a lot. Seems to me like a very forward-looking concerto. The scale of it is quite big. It's got a big first movement, 13 minutes, and quite a long second movement at 10 minutes. And it really bounces along. It's a really, it's like a sort of festive work. And it's now one of my favorite. I put it in my top 10 now. So, yeah. And then number 27, the last concerto, which I've already mentioned. And it does sound like he's saying goodbye to the genre, although in reality he couldn't have been, because he wouldn't have known that he was going to die so young. And I'm sure that it's tantalizing to think that where Mozart would have taken the piano concerto if he'd lived. I've got no reason to believe that he probably would have gone in the direction of Beethoven, but he was already doing it. He was already stretching the piano concerto to. He was pushing it in that direction. He was breaking new ground, particularly in the minor key works. So who knows what he would have done in the future? We'll never know. Let me just then give you my top 10 Mozart piano concertos. Okay, let's just go through them. So starting at number 10, I go for number 26. Number 9, I go for piano concerto number 22. Number 8, I go for concerto number 19. Number 7, I'll go for concerto number 9. Number 6, I'll go for concerto number 25. Number 5, I'll go for concerto number 21. Number 4, I'll go for concerto number 24. Number 3, concerto number 17. Number 2, concerto number 23. And number 1, concerto number 20. Well, I don't know. I've rushed through that a bit, but they're my top 10. But really, of course, they're all worth listening to from K175 onwards. Every single one of them is worth listening to. And, this Gazer Under box set is probably as good as any. The only thing that's probably lacking on the DG set is maybe the sound quality. It's not as good as, I don't know, maybe some of the works on Decca, maybe Philips, Brendel, probably slightly better sound quality than a 60s DG. Okay, I don't know whether any of you guys in chat, there's not many of you, have got anything to say about the Mozart piano concertos, or if there's anybody listening to this after the live stream appears, you can tell me what your favorite pianists are for these works. I'm sure I've missed out lots and lots of pianists who've played these. I wish I could remember more of them. But I think I've probably given a fair overview on Mozart piano concertos, and I do believe Mozart is the king of the piano concertos. I think that is fairly well undisputed. If you think that Beethoven composed 5, yeah, I mean, they're all sort of great concertos. Beethoven's 5. I mean, look, Beethoven said this is an anecdote, it hasn't been confirmed, but apparently when Mozart heard K491, concerto in C minor, he was sitting with somebody, I'm not too sure who, but when he was listening to it, he turned to this friend and he said, "We'll never come up with anything as good as this." Brahms has also said, the only reason that people like me can get rich is because the concert goers out there don't know what the best music is, like Mozart piano concertos. So not only are Mozart's piano concertos probably favored by the concert-going public over the years, with really probably only Rachmaninoff perhaps, maybe Beethoven challenging him. I must say that you probably will hear Rachmaninoff's second and third piano concertos more in concert halls than you will Mozart's, D minor concerto and his C major concerto, A major. From my own experiences, that's the case because romantic music is just so incredibly popular and it gets people there. If you want to get people sitting in seats, you will probably do Rachmaninoff's second or third piano concerto rather than than a Mozart piano concerto. That gets more people there, but I don't really think that that's a true indication of who has the greatest piano concertos. I think Mozart's are the greatest piano concertos, but that's taking nothing away from Rachmaninoff. I mean, just to say what my other favorite piano concertos are outside of Mozart, I'll tell you straight away. My favorite piano concertos outside of Mozart are Schumann, Grieg. Schumann and Grieg, I think, are absolutely phenomenal, particularly the Grieg. That is absolutely such an amazing concerto. The Tchaikovsky concerto, I think, is phenomenal. And then, of course, we've got Rachmaninoff's second and third piano concertos. There are others, of course. I mean, composers like Saint-Saëns and some of the others, I've not really got into those much. So I don't think that I don't think that there have been that many composers who've really composed great piano concertos. There's really only Mozart, Beethoven, Schumann and Grieg, but they only did one each. Tchaikovsky's first is great, but the others not so much. Rachmaninoff composed a couple of great piano concertos. Yeah, Mozart is the undisputed king of piano concertos. There should be no dispute about that. Okay, Alex R says, I found a good one in the charity shop on Friday. Victoria Molova playing the Four Seasons. I would have loved to have that. Alex, I'll give you, I don't know, I'll give you £15 for that right away. But I wouldn't recommend you sell it because I think I've never even seen that before. I think you could probably sell that for about £50 on eBay if it's in good condition. Victoria Molova, I would love to have her playing the Bach sonatas and partitas. They go for an absolute fortune. I'll probably end up having to buy those on CD in order to hear them. Yeah, well done for that, Alex. Okay, well, I'm signing off now. It's getting late here. It's 12:45 in the UK, British summertime. So yeah, I better get to bed. Thanks a lot for being with me, and I'll be back again, probably with another video about, maybe a similar one to this, maybe talking about Mozart symphonies next time. Okay, thanks for watching. Goodbye.